You're listening to 15 Minutes, where we feature community leaders sharing what the rest of us should know but likely don't. Hi, Chad Franson here, one of the hosts of Share Your Voice, where we talk with top-notch law firms and lawyers about what it takes to grow a successful law practice. This episode is brought to you by Gladiator Law Marketing, delivering tailor-made services to help you accomplish your objectives and maximize your growth potential. To have a successful marketing campaign and make sure you're getting the best ROI, your firm needs to have a better website and better content. Gladiator Law Marketing uses artificial intelligence, machine learning, and decades of experience to outperform the competition. To learn more, go to gladiatorlawmarketing.com, where you can schedule a free marketing consultation. My guest today is Deena Buchanan, the founder of Buchanan Law Firm, LLC. Deena is a graduate of the University of Pittsburgh and the Georgetown University Law Center. After graduating from law school in 1998, she worked for a large law practice in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and later for a Fortune 500 company in Philadelphia and other large law firms, where she worked on several high-profile cases. In 2008, Deena returned to New Mexico and opened her own firm, Buchanan Law Firm, LLC, to provide representation to individuals in employment and personal injury matters. In addition to her legal work, Deena has a deep appreciation for the natural beauty of New Mexico and the American Southwest. She can often be found hiking the trails, skiing with her family, or capturing nature with her camera. Deena divides her time between Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Deena, great to have you today. How are you?
So nice to see you. Thanks.
You as well. Thank you. Hey, tell me, how and when did you know that becoming an attorney was going to be your thing?
Geez, I was very young, and I always asked my parents why, and I never accepted their answer. So my parents, we don't have lawyers in the family, and so they started thinking that I was going to go into law at a very young age. I was probably about 9 years old when I started getting that response from them. I feel bad for them now.
So they figured you had characteristics of an attorney. When did you decide that this is what I really want?
I was probably in late middle school, early high school.
Oh, wow.
I got involved in the United Nations Club, and we did a lot of competitive, debate style things there. And I was just fascinated by international law and the resolutions that we wrote. And we got to interview some ambassadors and personnel, different embassies at the UN. And it just gave me this real appreciation for the impact that you can do as a body. And then, that translated eventually into law.
So take me through kind of your journey as you kind of started, as you broke into the legal industry. How did that go?
Well, after college at the University of Pittsburgh, I, went to law school. I was working at that point on publishing a piece about the introduction of the EEO Act, and in the media business. My uncle was a station manager at a TV station in Pittsburgh, and I had the opportunity to interview a bunch of the women who worked with him, and a woman I called my Aunt Estelle, who was the HR director at the TV station, and we created a case study about how this TV station really changed, their practices and brought women on air and brought women into management and stuff to comply with the act. And that was really cool. I got to go to the National Archives in DC. And then a few months later, I was in law school at Georgetown, and it was just wonderful to go to Washington. So that was awesome. And then after law school, I moved to Albuquerque. My ex-husband is from here, and I'd always been interested in the Southwest. So we got jobs out here and moved out here, went home to Philadelphia for about 8 years, and then moved back in 2008 with our family.
So while you were in Philadelphia, you worked for some larger law firms and some corporations. What did you kind of do there?
So when I was at Morgan, Lewis and Bockius, I was in the employment law department and worked on class action litigation for some of the age discrimination cases that they were handling for like Bell Atlantic, and there were a few others that involved the changeover from a pension plan to what they called a cash balance plan. They were massive cases. And then some smaller cases too, that I was able to have a more hands-on role with. And then I went to more of a regional law firm called Wolf Block, and then from there in-house to Toll Brothers. I was the first employment lawyer at Toll Brothers, and I got to do a combination of litigation. And we were in over 20 states at the time. So I got to fly around the country doing litigation and employment law stuff throughout the company. So that was pretty crazy. It was a great, great experience. And then I moved back to New Mexico because I had little ones. And I was, they say in-house is a step back, but my in-house job was not that.
Oh, yeah.
It was pretty intense. So it was wonderful. It was just really hard to travel that much with a baby on the way and a toddler at the time.
How did your kind of your experience working for those large firms, maybe a corporation, how did that help you now in your current role as a plaintiff's attorney?
It has been amazing. After I came back to New Mexico as well, I represented excess insurance carriers. They hired me to represent trucking companies, hospitals, large manufacturers, oil companies in really high stakes litigation as well. So with all of those experiences, I really got a deep understanding of how companies work. When I was at Toll Brothers, I was a corporate assistant secretary or something. So I had an official corporate role, and I was allowed to go to board of directors meetings at times to make presentations to the board. I got to work with the C-suite executives on a regular basis, as well as department heads. And you really get to kind of see how an organization lives and breathes and functions, and where its focuses are, and how it makes decisions, and who's at the table, what documents are out there, how communications are shared through a company. And especially because we were publicly traded, we had, the ramp up to SEC disclosures and, Bob's statements to the shareholders and stuff. So it was just amazing. And I draw on that knowledge every day when I get ready for corporate representative depositions. I ask for documents. I teach my associates how to, follow the trail of decision makers. And when I teach, I often teach lawyers, how a company works, to kind of just so that they understand what they're asking for. Because, a lot of times plaintiffs will ask for a document by a title that they've heard some other company use, but the company just says, well, we don't have that document. Well, they may not have that document, but they might have a document that plays that role within the other company. So it's kind of understanding what these functions are, so that when we go for information, we can just ask good questions too. I mean, when I was on the defense side, I'd get questions and say, well, what are they asking for? And it was just some term of art that they thought that they were swinging around in the industry, but it really didn't apply, or it didn't apply to that company. So
you obviously had some great experience. You clearly learned a lot, but opening up your own law firm, I'm sure that offered some new things that maybe you didn't know. Were there any kind of maybe big surprises or things like, oh, I didn't think about that, right when you started out?
Oh gosh, I mean, there's so much to running a business that is so different from anything that I learned in law school, or practicing at law firms, or even, luckily I had the corporate experience for several years, because that honestly gave me the best insight into, profitability and making hard decisions. Because I was at Toll Brothers in 2008 when the crash happened in the housing industry. And I was involved in a lot of, layoffs across the country, and watching those decisions be made. It taught me so many valuable lessons about running a business. But when you put up your own shingle and you've got to focus on profitability, there's so many things from, spending on technology, scaling, when to scale, when to hire, when to scale back, when to focus on one practice area versus multiple, how to brand yourself. I mean, those things have all been a journey for me in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I bet. So you've kind of zeroed in on employment and personal injury matters. What would you say are some keys if you have a quick answer to this, what are some keys to
Sure.
successfully representing clients in those types of cases, employment and personal injury matters?
Oh, sure. Well, with both of them, you have to lead with empathy. One of our core values at our firm is that we lead with empathy. And I teach it, I preach it, I hire based on that. And if people really are not passionate about working with individuals who've been hurt or injured in some way, they won't do well here and they won't be happy here. So I would say that if you're going to work in this space for plaintiffs, you're dealing with people at the very worst parts of their lives. You know, you've got people that have been catastrophically injured or in chronic pain, or their loved ones are watching them go through it in the trucking cases, or they've had the loss of a loved one. And there's so much that they have to deal with other than the lawsuit. So you can't come in expecting clients to be, able to give you all of the information that you need or documents that you need. You've got to be very, very patient, and you've got to know, what they need and how to help them, to help you. And then, the same thing with employment. You really have to come to it with empathy, because a lot of our clients I see have, trauma at work. We represent victims of sexual assault in the workplace. We represent people that have been sexually harassed and almost terrorized by coworkers, retaliated against, had their safety put in danger, sometimes physically, because of, complaints that they've made. And so dealing with that and the loss of a job, it's like a death for them. And so they may come to us and they're just out of sorts. And, they're dealing with a lot of grief. And so you just really have to come to them knowing how to help them for a while and walk with them. So
Go ahead.
those are two. Those are two for sure. And then obviously subject area knowledge. I mean, they're both special areas of law. So don't go into your first one by yourself. Get co-counsel who is experienced in either area.
You mentioned trucking cases. I know you've recently, with sometime maybe within the past year, become board certified in trucking law. What does
Yes,
that mean? What does that mean to you, and how does that affect you?
that was a huge accomplishment for me. So it required a board examination that is issued by the National Board of Trial Advocates. And then there was a really extensive application that required a certain number of trials, a certain number of depositions in the trucking area, a certain number of caseload that we have, appearances in court, emotions that you write. I mean, there's a matrix of all the experiences that you get in doing trucking cases. And it took me several years to build up my experience to be able to qualify for it. So I passed. Oh, and then you also have to have extensive CLEs in the couple of years prior to taking the test and applying. And I was able to do that by going to a lot of conferences with some groups that I'm in.
So what is that? So are you focused mainly on, representing truckers?
I represent people that have been injured in trucking crashes.
Okay.
So that can be truckers. I actually have a handful of clients who are truck drivers.
Mm-hmm.
And, over the years, I have actually represented them in employment cases as well, because I've driven a tractor trailer now. I've gone to trucking school in Montana and Alaska to just get my hands in the truck and work with instructors and learn how to do a pre-trip inspection and learn how the regulations and rules really impact the driver. So sometimes I do represent truck drivers, and sometimes I represent people in passenger vehicles that have been hurt or killed from a trucking crash.
People probably don't pay much attention to that until they're in that exact scenario. So for somebody who's naive or, maybe there's some misconceptions or something like that, what are some things about trucking law that maybe should be important to people who often drive on freeways or highways that maybe they don't know about?
100%. Yeah, so a couple things. In New Mexico, we are very prone to dust storms, especially this time of year. So it's a really, timely issue. For people driving in places like New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, other parts of the West and the Midwest that get dust storms during a windy season, I definitely suggest following what they call the Smith system, and you can Google it. The Smith system has several principles that they teach truck drivers for basically defensive driving. So it's like, keep your distance, always give yourself an out. It's basically some really basic principles of maintaining vigilance about the space around you and knowing how far your stopping distance is when you're driving around vehicles. So if you do find yourself in a situation where you're in very tight traffic with tractor trailers, don't let yourself get boxed in between two big trucks on a busy highway. Stay in the fast lane to pass, give yourself good space before you cut back over in front of that trucker, because they may or may not be able to stop if there's bad weather. Be really aware. Is it really windy? Does the truck driver, on their truck, do you see lots of straps flapping or chains flapping or things looking loose? Because there's rules about tying down a load and securing it. Sometimes crashes happen because we don't realize that their load is coming loose. And, it's almost impossible to predict that as a driver with a car. But it's something that, I saw this on the highway just a few weeks ago. And I told my husband, get away, get around that truck. I'm worried about the load. I am not fun to take a road trip with anymore because I'm constantly saying these things to my family. Another thing, like I said, bad weather, slow down, keep distance, give the truckers space. In New Mexico, and I know all through the West and the Midwest, we have oil fields that have, very kind of random, isolated little dirt roads and stuff off of the highway. So you could be on a highway and then suddenly a tractor trailer has to make a hard right to get on a not very well improved road. And I know my friends in Minnesota have this in the logging industry. So if you see a truck ahead of you that looks like it's changing to the left lane, it might be actually getting ready to turn right. And it's almost impossible to predict, but a lot of crashes happen that way where the cars will continue to go because it looks like the trucks aren't supposed to do that. That is not the way to make that turn. But truckers often find themselves in that situation because they're not really going slow enough. They're not prepared enough in advance. They don't want to go past it and turn around and try again. So they will try to, go out to make a sharp turn, and they will then cause an underride where the oncoming traffic will go under the trailer. And it's very hard to survive that. So, be just aware. If you know that there's roads like that coming up because you're local to the area, be very cautious. Bad weather, give them lots of space. And at night too, just kind of be aware of spacing.
What kind of inspired you to choose this as kind of a field of interest? Obviously, it takes a lot of work. You had to. I mean, I would want to have to learn how to drive a truck personally. Like, what caused you to what inspired you to do this?
I handled several multiple death cases when I was on the defense side, and catastrophic cases, where maybe 9 vehicles, 11 vehicles, 15 vehicles, or there was a bus meets semi where a lot of people died or were seriously injured. And I just, I saw the devastation that it can cause when people are unsafe drivers. And I really kind of found this as, I love digging into a complex problem. I love the technical side of it, the engineering and the reconstruction and the medical side. But I get such satisfaction knowing that I am making a difference and hopefully making the roads safer, because I do drive on these highways with my family. And, if I can make a point to a trucking company that they get safer and I can save some other family out there, it just means the world to me.
From all of your experiences there, my guess, just as kind of somebody who's ignorant to this type of thing, would be that a lot of the accidents are caused because people view trucks as an impediment to where they're going, and they just want to zip around or somehow get through the maybe the slowdown caused by the truck. If there's some advice you could give to trucking companies as you try and make them safer, what would that be?
Well, distraction is a huge issue in trucking right now. Well, there's two main things I would tell trucking companies to make things safer. First of all, roll out side under. We have these things called side underride guards that are available out in the world and in the United States. Our government does not require that trucking companies use them, but over and over again, I have seen horrible, horrible outcomes because of, like I said, when a truck is turning and somebody goes underneath it, trucks will cut people off, and there is no hope for those people. But there's actually these little safety devices that you can put on under the sides of the trailer that would prevent that from happening, just like they have in the back. You've probably seen those low bars that they have. So you can do a similar thing on the sides, and that would save countless lives. You would end up with injuries, but you would not end up with people literally losing their heads in the process. It's awful.
Yeah. Ugh.
So that's and it's not expensive. I mean, it's not going to be cheap to roll out, but for the cost versus the benefit, I mean, you'd be saving so many lives every year if we had that. The other thing is dealing with distraction, which is there's studies that say that distracted drivers are basically as impaired as people that are drunk on the road. And, truckers are using their cell phones. Truckers are, talking on the phone, even with hands-free, and they're distracted. I had a case where a trucker was looking at his phone at a GPS for directions because he hadn't done proper trip planning. And he just proceeded right in front of my client who died. Just really cut right across the highway because he just didn't see a stop sign because he was looking at his phone. So, there's so many things I would say, use technologies out there. This is what's out there, Chad. I mean, it's amazing. There's facial recognition software that you can put in the cab of a truck that watches the trucker and sends an alert to the trucking company that says, hey, this person is nodding off. This person is looking like they're looking down at a phone, and it sends an alarm and it'll correct the driver while they're on the road.
Wow.
So can you imagine if all of the trucking companies out there got that technology? So many people's lives would be saved.
Yeah. Wow. That would be huge. You mentioned that you do some teaching. How have you, or in what ways do you do that? And how do you successfully mentor maybe coach new attorneys throughout their career?
So I love speaking at conferences. I just finished talking to the Florida trial lawyers last week. On Friday, I got to talk to them about a trucking topic. And then a couple weeks ago, I was in Charlotte, North Carolina with the Academy of Truck Accident Attorneys, which I love. I also speak for the American Association of Justice Trucking Litigation Group. They've been kind to ask me to speak a couple times at their conferences, going to Minnesota to speak to the trial lawyers there a couple weeks. So I just, anybody who wants to know something about trucking litigation, or, I often will talk about things from just my experience or from things specifically about having been on the defense side, we're representing corporations. What can I share about how things work? So it's just really fun for me. I get to meet a lot of great people. And I just feel so good being able to share.
Yeah, that's awesome. What about your leadership style within your own firm? How have you kind of shaped that culture at the Buchanan law firm?
Well, just before you and I got on this call, I was sitting with my associate, and we had 8 binders stretched out on my desk. And we were going through all of the documents to help prepare her for a deposition. She's doing a pretty complex deposition. And this is her first one like that. So basically what I do is I'll have multiple meetings. She'll send me, drafts of outlines and her thoughts, and then we'll meet, and, we're going to go through theory. We went through some of the law. I gave her some sample questions. We practiced, what the examination's going to flow like, and then sent her back with, a bunch of things to look at. And then we'll keep meeting about that up until the date that she does the deposition. So I'm pretty hands-on, I do really love, it's hard for me to delegate and let go, but I love watching my associates do depots. So a lot of times, they'll be on the depot, I'll be on the depot, And then on Teams chat or something, I'll be sending them, questions or follow up or something so that they do it. They get the experience, but they have some training wheels. Or if we do it in person, I'll just sit in there and then on breaks we chat about, like, hey, I think we can clean this up, or you ask these questions or something. So it's great.
Yeah, sounds like it. Hey, how I'm sure a lot of these situations that you get involved in terms of representing people, they can be very emotionally charged. How do you kind of develop and maintain strong relationships while still being honest with your clients?
Oh, with the clients,
Yeah.
they, the key is if you lead with empathy and you're a genuine person and you really care about what they're going through, then you're really walking a journey with them.
Hmm.
And they can tell the difference if you're just in it for money or whether you really care about what's happening. So, at our firm, these cases are potentially huge cases, but we try not to talk about money, honestly, with the clients, or even really think about that. We think about telling their story. So you really have to get to know them and go to their homes or spend time with them, go have a meal with them, chat with them on the phone during things, talk to them at the holidays. I have clients who text me at the holidays, and I always love getting the text messages because, they really become sort of our extended family. If you do that, then, they know when you call them to give them good news or bad news that you're doing the best you can and that you are caring about what happens to them more than anything.
I have one more question for you, but first, tell me how people can find out more about Buchanan Law Firm.
Sure. Our website is www.buchananlawnm.com. And our phone number is 505-900-3559. So either way is a great way to reach out.
We talked about your kind of your influence on younger attorneys and your teaching experience. What advice could you give to somebody that would be valuable based on your extensive experience that they would never learn academically or in law school?
One thing that you never learn in law school is the importance of really digging in to the evidence in a case. You learn the rules, you learn the laws, but you don't learn about how to use the evidence. So the first thing that I did as a young lawyer that I think really served me well long-term was I learned how to be very organized about documents. What is the evidence? I've read through everything, summarized it in a spreadsheet, made sure that I only really, like, once I looked at it, I could always find it again by coming up with some system like using Bates numbers or something. And it gave the partners that I was working for a lot of confidence in me because they knew I knew the facts and I knew the file better than anybody. And if you start there, and you do your research so you know how then, what is the law and what are your goals under the law and whether it's a defense or whether it's being the plaintiff, what do you need to prove? So what evidence do you need and why? And then, dig into every document. It's amazing what you can find if you just read it. And so many times I see lawyers who skim through stuff or they ignore a bunch of documents and they just focus on the things they think are important. But there's gold sometimes in those spreadsheets or printouts or emails or whatever it is that are tedious to go through. So that's what I would suggest.
Yeah, very interesting. Good stuff. Hey, Deena, thank you so much for all of your thoughts and your insights. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you very much. Been great to talk to you.
Thanks for having me. I so appreciate it. Okay, take care. Bye.
Thank you. So long, everybody. Thanks for listening to 15 Minutes. Be sure to subscribe and we'll see you next time.